The Year to Their podcast, it's time to start the show. Be sure to hold on tight, here we go. Exploring all the different Disney destinations. Year to Their, it's time to start the fun.
Hello everybody and welcome to the Year to Their podcast, Walt Disney World Word of the Week. I am your host, Phil Gramlich, and every week I will bring you a different Walt Disney World word and then give you some tips, tricks, hints, history, background. Let's see how many I can list. All kinds of stuff about that word. This week's Walt Disney World Word of the Week is brought to you by the letter G. And this week's Word of the Week is also brought to you by Beth Burke from Erie, Pennsylvania, who actually recommended this Word of the Week to me on Facebook. So yes, that's right. This week's Word of the Week is Gaston. So at first glance, there wasn't a whole lot to talk about with Gaston, but once I dug a little deeper, to borrow a phrase from The Princess and the Frog, I discovered that there was a lot more to Gaston than meets the eye. Okay, now I'm thinking of Transformers. Remember Transformers? More than meets the eye. Okay, that's going off on a tangent. I'm sorry. So thank you, Beth Burke from Erie, Pennsylvania, and thank you, Transformers, for my minute back in the 80s. All right, here we go. On with Gaston. So the thing is, Beauty and the Beast is actually a tale as old as time, right? That phrase wasn't just a clever tagline for the movie. I mean, this story is centuries old. But the version of Beauty and the Beast that Disney actually adapted into its film was written by, and you know what? I'm not even going to try to say this because it's French and you guys have heard my accents. So it was written by this individual.
Jeanne-Marie Le Prince de Beaumont.
You see, I would have said something like Beaumont, and that sounds like, I don't know, Fred Sanford's long-lost grandson who didn't work in the junkyard with him or something. I'm not sure. Or the guy up the street from me in Philadelphia. It definitely doesn't sound like a French novelist, that's for sure. So Disney adapted this version of the story, but they didn't stay completely true to the story itself. To give you a better idea of what I'm talking about, let me summarize my girl Beaumont's version of the story. Okay, here goes. So in her version, there's a wealthy merchant who lives in a very beautiful mansion with his 6 children, 3 daughters and 3 sons. All 3 of his daughters are beautiful, but his one daughter, obviously named Beauty, is the, well, obviously, again, most beautiful of all 3. So fast forward a while, the merchant loses all of his money and goes off on a quest to try to find more money. Before he leaves, he asks his kids if any of them want him to bring something back, kind of especially for each one. His daughter Beauty asks for a rose. So you can kind of see how this ties into the Disney version already, right? So after his journey and on his way back to his home with his children, he gets lost. And the merchant finds a huge castle somewhere in the woods. When he gets to the castle, the doors mystically open as if opened by some unseen host. While he's there, he's given shelter, he's given dinner, he's given somewhere to sleep. The next morning, he's even given breakfast. But on his way out of the castle the next morning, he sees a rose garden, remembers his daughter Beauty's wish, and unfortunately for him and for his family, he picks up a rose. Then the Beast appears, totally freaks out, and tells him, since he took advantage of his kindness and his hospitality and decided to steal from him, that he has to die. So the merchant starts crying, he starts weeping, he starts saying, hey, listen, let me go home. I have all these kids to go home to. And the Beast says, all right, listen, you can go home if you send one of your daughters back to the castle to live with me. The merchant agrees. Why? I have no idea. And he is allowed to go back to his home, where he doesn't plan on telling his kids this story, but Beauty eventually coaxes it out of him and decides she's going to go back to the castle. So Beauty gets there. The Beast tells her, listen, I'm the Beast, obviously. You are the mistress of this castle now. I want you to live in peace, in harmony, and you're here, so let's make the best of it, right? But he's obviously instantly smitten with her, and every single night he asks her to marry him. Unfortunately for the Beast, every single night, Beauty says no, and goes to bed and dreams of a handsome prince that she could fall in love with someday. To wrap it up, Beauty gets homesick. Beast gives her a magic mirror and a ring and tells her, hey, listen, go back to your family, go back to your father, but you have to come back here to live with me after 3 days. Oh, and this mirror is so you can take a look back at me at any time that you would like. And the ring, well, that's when you want to come back to the castle, just spin it around 3 times and you will instantly be back at the castle. So Beauty's home. She doesn't want to be back at the castle. She decides, you know what, I'm just going to stay here. He's not going to do anything. She stays there, but then starts feeling guilty that she didn't go back to the Beast. Takes a look in the mirror. There's the Beast lying half dead amongst the rose bushes. She turns the ring 3 times, ends up back at the rose bushes, crying over the Beast's body because obviously he dies. The tears fall on the Beast, bring him back to life. He turns into a prince, yada, yada, yada. Happily ever after. That's the end of the story. Now, obviously, I am almost 6 minutes into this episode. I haven't mentioned Gaston because guess what? Gaston was not involved in the original version of the story that Disney actually adapted for the film. But when it came to make this version of the film, Disney really needed a villain, right? Because the original Beauty and the Beast, as it stood, really didn't have a villain. I mean, the merchant was kind of a slimy kind of character, but he wasn't really a villain. The Beast certainly wasn't a villain since it was his rose that got stolen in the first place. So Disney decided they were going to add in Beauty, or as she would be known in a Disney movie, Belle's sisters, and add an evil aunt named Marguerite. In the original adaptation, Marguerite was the main villain, and she was going to try to force Belle into marrying this kind of wimpy, kind of antagonistic, egotistical, original character named Gaston. Now, see, Gaston was supposed to be kind of a secondary character in the film. Now, this version of Gaston had been around since the 1940s, but the Disney version was created by screenwriter Linda Wolverton, and she used a bunch of her ex-boyfriends as inspiration for the character. Okay, so now this is kind of taking shape, right? Gaston is in the film. In the early version, he's a character, kind of a supporting character to the main villain. But after this early adaptation was looked over by the studio, they decided, you know what? We need a stronger villain. We need a different kind of villain than we've ever had before. So Marguerite was dropped from the story. Belle's sisters were dropped from the story. And Disney decided they were going to make a handsome, kind of charming, egotistical villain. And Gaston kind of morphed into that role. Disney animator Andreas Deja was given the kind of difficult task of creating a handsome, kind of almost likable villain. So he decided to kind of base Gaston on the handsome soap opera leads of the 80s and design him in kind of a grotesque, kind of twisted Prince Charming mold. So the Gaston you see in the film is what Deja finally came up with after a while. But what you don't see in the film is the earlier versions of the Gaston character, where he was a skinny, white-haired aristocrat, and then, not aristocrat, and then he morphed into a kind of an unattractive slob of a character. I mean, Gaston went through a bunch of different iterations before they came up with the handsome, cocky, egotistical Gaston that we know and love and come to hate today. One thing that I think is really interesting in Gaston's story is that he goes from being, like I said, a really likable, kind of fun, comical villain to really in the moment when they sing the song Kill the Beast and he convinces the villagers to storm the castle with him. That is when he makes the full conversion into complete, ugly, bad guy villain. And that was the first time Disney ever had a villain that wasn't completely kind of fleshed out from the beginning, right? He actually started off kind of harmless. Everyone loved him in the town. They all wanted to be him, like LeFou, or be with him, or however you want to see that part of the film. And they kind of all sided with him at the end, even though he completely lost his mind, threw Maurice in an insane asylum and tried to go kill the Beast, somehow thinking that was going to win Belle over and he was going to end up marrying the girl in the end. And if you've seen the animated movie, you pretty much know how Gaston's story begins, unfolds, and ends, right? It's like boy meets girl, boy falls for girl, boy goes absolutely crazy over girl, boy tries to kill for girl, boy ends up dead trying to kill for girl. And in case you're wondering, does Gaston really die at the end of the animated movie? Because, yeah, he just falls off the castle. You never see him actually die. The next time you are watching the film, pause it when Gaston falls off the side of the castle. You will see two little skulls in his eyes, actually in his eyeballs, that were drawn in there by the animators to prove that he does actually fall to his death toward the end of the film. Actually, originally, Gaston was supposed to survive that fall, and there was a scene where he was supposed to hit the ground, only have a broken leg, and then he was going to be eaten alive by a pack of wolves. I don't know how the heck that would have made for a better ending. That would have been Beauty and the Beast, the version that I could not show my children until they were over 18 years old. So yes, Gaston does die in the end, kind of, well, mercifully if you ask me, especially compared to the way it really could have gone down. Belle and the Beast, or the Prince, or whoever he is, end up happily ever after, and that is the end of Gaston's story. And that is going to do it for this week's Ear to There podcast, Walt Disney World Word of the Week. Thank you again to Beth Burke, who actually mentioned this one first, and thank you to everyone else on the Facebook page who mentioned Gaston a little bit later on. And also thank you to anyone else who offered up any other G words for this week's Word of the Week. They won't be forgotten and will probably be used for the next G when it comes up in the Word of the Week series. So thank you so much for listening to this episode. I really, really appreciate it. I know I am super excited to see Beauty and the Beast this weekend. I am seeing it Friday, March 17th, 2017 on St. Patrick's Day. I'm going with my wife and kids. I'm so excited. I hope you guys are going to see it. I hope you're excited too. So if you did enjoy this episode, please just share it with your fellow Gaston or Beauty and the Beast fans, or really anyone who you think might be interested in listening. I'd really, really appreciate it, and thank you so much in advance. And just remember, there will be a new episode of the Ear to There podcast, Walt Disney World Word of the Week, each and every Wednesday morning, as well as a regular episode of the Ear to There podcast each and every Monday morning. So once again, thank you so much for listening. Until next time, have a great week. Bye-bye.